demon comes out when you expel it. The stronghold comes down when you demolish it with the Bible.
Yes, I'm gonna be holding it wrong. Welcome back. Today is all about Barbie, the new Barbie movie, and I hope you watched it because there's gonna be a lot of spoilers in this video. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because I watched the Barbie movie in cinemas 3 times. Yes, 3 times, and I know. Sounds like I'm obsessed. I'm not. Most people just watched it and felt, what an interesting, fun film. But then there's that very small minority that just went in and thought, this film was directed at me. This film was talking about me and I hate it. Yeah, there was a lot of people that obsessed over it, said that it was anti-men, it was too woke, it was too feminist, it was this and that and the other, and I'm here to debunk every single thing that has been said. Well, not really. Also, I watched. Ben Shapiro has made so many videos on the Barbie movie because he apparently hates it, but he went and watched it with a notepad. But again, it's a Barbie movie. It's a movie about a doll, so it's not like I took it seriously, and I don't think anyone should take this video seriously either. And I will be referencing the Ben Shapiro video, even though I watched like 10 minutes of I think it was the 45-minute one. I couldn't do more than 10 minutes. One thing I do want to mention, and this is also something that people have been pointing out. Where's Raquel? Where's Raquel from Barbie Life in the Dream House?
I sensed tension and came as fast as I could.
She made that show. I mean, she carried that show on her back, literally. Without her, there was nothing. There was no substance.
It's me! It's me! It's me! It's probably not me.
And so I thought they would include her. I don't know how they would have included her character into the movie, because it was in Barbie Land, it was all Barbies and Kens and Alan and Midge. They could have probably mentioned her. Raquel is just her own self. There's these characters that are like Raquel. I think of the Turkish version of Gossip Girl. This is so random, but I remember when I was a kid, not only was I watching Gossip Girl, I was also watching the Turkish version of Gossip Girl, and there was a character in that show. So obviously the main character, the main girl, was blonde, but there was another one that was dark-haired, red lipstick, wore like a lot of dark colors, which Raquel does as well in the show. But it just reminded me of her, and I love those characters. I love those like dark. It's not really a dark character. It's just like this sassy, this very dramatic characters. Those are always my favorites. So, the film starts, and it's sort of showing us a normal day in Barbie Land. We follow Margot Robbie's Barbie, the stereotypical Barbie. She wakes up, everything's perfect, her hair's perfect, her makeup's perfect, she goes and showers, everything's fine. She goes downstairs, has her little breakfast and everything. Like, everything's normal, and we quickly also realize that Barbie Land is a matriarchy where, you know, all the women, all the Barbies are the ones that sort of have a role in society. They all have houses, they all have jobs. Stereotypical Barbie doesn't have a job, but she still lives in this matriarchy. So there's like different kinds of Barbies. There is like astronaut Barbies, there's pilot Barbie, there's like Supreme Court Barbies, like this whole Supreme Court is just Barbies. And so quickly you realize that women rule this world, basically. And the Kens, as you know, we move on with Barbie's day, she goes to the beach and we see the Kens, I guess, for the first time, I think, because it's all been like Barbie, hi Barbie, it's all been like Barbies. And so we see Ken, and we quickly realize that he doesn't do much. The Kens don't really do much, they just exist. He even says this, like when he explains what he does, he's like, I'm not even a lifeguard, I just do beach, which I thought was kind of hilarious. But it kind of is pointing to the fact that the main attraction is Barbie. I don't think many people play with Ken, the doll, but a lot of people do play with Barbie. I don't remember if I played with Barbie, because the dolls or the little like things I remember playing with are like these fake phones. God, the 2000s were just iconic. Those were the days. If you had those, then you are part of the elite. It's not really my opinion, it's just a fact. So what is a matriarch? So matriarchy is opposite of patriarchy, which exists here in the real world, at least in the real world that they show, and in the Western world. Patriarchy, men hold the majority of the positions of power, and the matriarchy would be the women. But I do have to say that the matriarchy in Barbie Land is a lot more extreme than the patriarchy here in the real world or in the world that they show. The world that they show is just LA. You know what I mean? It's just the US, it's America, it's LA. But, you know, in most societies, most cultures that we know of anyways, do have a certain type of like patriarchy. What was also very interesting is that patriarchy in the real world, we kind of, it runs on these very rigid gender roles, as if like women are expected to serve men, they're expected to be in the house, or at least traditionally, you know, they're expected to be mothers. There's this like very traditional idea of the family. The man goes and he has a job, he's some kind of like important man in his job, and he's the main, you know, breadwinner, and then he comes home and he's, you know, expecting the woman to have, you know, done everything in the house, which, you know, to a certain extent, it's not that bad of an idea if that's what you want. But the oppressive idea of patriarchy is when it's forced upon you, when this is the only thing that you can be. However, the Kens in Barbie Land don't seem to have this servile status in Barbie Land. They sort of have this position that's just existence. You just exist. Also, you're obsessed with the Barbies, so you have a Barbie that you're obsessed with. So Ryan Gosling's Ken is obsessed with Margot Robbie's Barbie. He's completely head over heels in love with her, and he wants to spend time with her, and, you know, the whole thing. So then we move on throughout the day, and in the evening she has this whole like party. Margot Robbie's Barbie, she has this party at her house. There's a whole dance sequence, which was very fun. Ordinarily, I don't like those kinds of like random dance scenes or like musicals where they sing. Usually I don't like that, but this was like very fun, a part of the movie, and it was within the dance sequence. You can see that that Ken. There was some kind of like power struggle between Ken Ryan and Ken Simu. The fact that there is some kind of story within the dance sequence makes me really pay attention, which is why I like the dance scene. Now, within this dance sequence, we find out that Barbie has been having these weird thoughts of death. And then the next day, we see that things are not the way that they usually are. You know, she wakes up with messy hair, bad breath, her breakfast is burnt, the milk is expired, she has cellulite, her feet are flat on the floor when they usually, you know, she's on tippy toes usually. And so I do kind of like the fact that we got to live a whole day with her, like the previous day where everything was normal, everything was like sunshine and rainbows, and then we understand what's wrong, because sometimes movies have a tendency to really just shove the mystery in your face right away, which I kind of hate. But this was great, like we really got to live with the characters first, and then the next day it was even like random for us, like it was weird. So then she tells the other Barbies about it. Turns out she's malfunctioning, so she goes to Weird Barbie to talk about it, and then we realize that, oh, this is not new, this has happened, and that the person playing with her in the real world is having these thoughts, and that's sort of transferring to her, to the doll. So she has to go to the real world. She has to go to the real world and find the person that's playing with her and just, I guess, make them feel better. I don't really know what she was expected to do. It was really vague. Even Weird Barbie didn't say what she was supposed to do. She's just, you're gonna know. And then, yeah, she's off to the real world. And she takes Ken with her. Now, as soon as Ken and Barbie make it to the real world, they come in like these roller skates, and they're wearing these like funky leotard outfits, you know, very revealing, but obviously they come from Barbie Land, so it's not anything. It's not like you're objectifying Barbie when you're in Barbie Land. But when you come into the real world, patriarchy just in their face, really. And Barbie feels very uncomfortable while Ken feels empowered. The scene where Ken discovers patriarchy, where he goes and, you know, sees the men in the gym, and he also like sees policemen on horseback, dragonback. This is very good wine, and it's cheap. Anyways, so the scene where he discovers patriarchy, it's so funny. I thought it was so funny. There was like a montage of like different, it was like presidents and like different movies and like just different like manly things. And in the meantime, Barbie is trying to figure out, you know, how to find this person that's playing with her. And then she has these visions where she sees this girl, Sasha. She sees the school that Sasha goes to in her vision, so she makes it to the school. She takes Ken with her. And there's this really funny scene where a woman asks Ken for the time, like, what's the time? And he's like, this is very brilliant acting as well. Obviously, it's not brilliant. It's not like, but I thought it was very funny that Ken went from like this like hunched person to like when she asked him for the time, he was like, you respect me. So Ken discovers patriarchy and absolutely loves it. Reads a bunch of books in like minutes and decides this is my new thing. This is his new thing. He's gonna do patriarchy, and he tries to do patriarchy in the real world, but it fails because he doesn't have a degree. He has nothing. He can't even do beach. And then he was like, you know what? I need to go to some place where I can start patriarchy from the ground up. So he goes back to Barbie land. In the meantime, Barbie gets picked up. Oh, actually, Barbie, she finds Sasha. She finds Sasha, and Sasha's not what she thought she was. Sasha is crazy. Not crazy. Sasha doesn't like Barbie. Sasha calls her a fascist. Sasha calls her a bunch of stuff, and it's true. I mean, I don't know about fascist, but Barbie is this perfect version of she's peak femininity. She's peak everything. I mean, she has so many careers and she does everything. And Sasha says that she's been making women feel bad since she was invented. I thought that was very interesting how we were criticizing Barbie in the Barbie movie. I thought that was, especially because Mattel is behind this movie. So yeah, but I knew that there was going to be scenes where they were going to make up for all this criticism. Anyway, so Barbie walks away just in tears. Mattel finds out that there's a Barbie and a Ken roaming around, so they're like, you need to pick these bitches up. So they pick them up. No, actually they pick Barbie up because Barbie's the most important one. They don't really care about Ken. So they pick Barbie up and they take her to the Mattel headquarters. She's at Mattel now. Girlie's at Mattel. And she walks in and she's like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm malfunctioning, something's happening. They're like, you know what? Go back in this box and everything will be fine. She doesn't want to go back in the box. She has like this PTSD moment. She's like, oh, I don't want to do it. So she runs away. Before she runs away, or before she even gets in the box, she asks, oh, can I meet the woman behind Mattel, the CEO? The CEO is Will Ferrell, and the whole board of men is like the CEO, the COO, and the C's and O's in the world. It's all men, and that's kind of when it's like, oh, a company that makes Barbies is run by men. No, I don't know what the reality is. I think Ben mentions this in his video where he's like, oh, actually there are 4 or 5 women in the board of Mattel, actually. Yeah, apparently. I don't know, but it's a fair criticism because there's a lot of other companies out there that market or make products for women that are just run by men. So I think it's just a criticism of not just Mattel. I think it's a criticism of a lot of other brands and companies. But the Will Ferrell and the other men are very silly. They're very silly caricatures of these silly men, and so many men, or so many people really, were kind of hurt by this because they're like, this is not how men are. This is not an accurate depiction. This is anti-men. Why are they so silly? And why are the Kens in Barbie Land so passive? And what is this voice? It's so funny to me because whenever they talk about how Kens in Barbie Lands are so passive and why they're so passive and why do they have no power, oh feminists, this is a feminist utopia. Did you see the ending? Anyways, what I like to say is it's so funny to me how it's always the anti-fem, like the men that hate feminism that are like, oh, but the Kens are so passive. The Kens don't even have any power. That's the point. That's kind of the point. If you're butthurt about how the Kens, who are not even servile in Barbie Land, don't have any power, a movie, a doll, imagine how we feel. Imagine how tired we are of it. It is a movie literally criticizing patriarchy by making it into a matriarchy so that you could understand how ridiculous it is that half of the population doesn't have as much power as the other half. And you're like, oh my god, the other half doesn't have power. Exactly. That's the point. That's the whole point. Oh my god, I think I'm drinking too much. Okay, you know what? I can still hold on to it, but I'm not gonna drink because we're getting woozy up in here. Oh my god, I forgot to mention. So when Barbie and Ken get to the real world, there's this scene where I think a guy goes, oh, give us a smile, Blondie. And Ben Shapiro is like, that never happened. Like, no one has ever said that ever. So funny to me. Are you a woman? Have you experienced that? Because I have. It's not fun. It's not. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Anyways, back to Mattel. The thing I really liked about the fact that they were all like behaving the same way and they were all as dramatic and as silly is because I think it really points to the fact that the reason why so many men have power is because, you know, they all act the same way, they all behave the same way, they all dress the same way, they all look alike. It's mostly straight white men, and there's this concept as well where they all behave the same way, so they just hire people just like them, and that's how it's sort of maintained. This whole straight white men rule the world, so because they just sort of hire the same people as them. Gravitating to people that look like you, behave like you, it's a very normal thing because you've probably had the same kinds of experiences. Obviously not exactly the same, but you've had the same kinds of experiences. It's not that weird. When it becomes problematic is when it creates groups where a lot of people, like women and some men, are in this case excluded from any kind of, power, any kind of, oh god, this wine is killing me. Oh my god. Yeah, so the creation of groups that include some men, straight white men, and exclude women and other men, because obviously other men, like for example men of color or queer men, are excluded from this because they're not straight white men. That's the whole thing. The straight white men are the peak of masculinity in the same way that straight white women are the peak of femininity. Why am I sweating? Is this a good idea? I don't know. Because I was very nervous to make this video, or to make any kind of video, and if you watched my last video, you know that I was very terrible at making videos because I'm very uncomfortable in front of the camera, but now I feel like I'm too comfortable in front of the camera. Anyways, so this concept is called homosexuality. No, homosociality. The reason why it's called homo is because it's the homo hetero. It's like, scientific terms. Doesn't mean it's gay. Okay, let's not make it gay. Jesus Christ, bro, what is this wine doing to me? I'm still sipping it. Yeah, so it creates gender segregated organizations basically, where a lot of people are excluded. Women, other men. I've said this before. You understand. So it's kind of pointing to the fact that even in, like, when Ken was discovering patriarchy, when he was like, oh, I would like a high paying or like high role like job, and he was like, well, you have no degree, and then the other guy was like, but I'm a man, and the other guy was like, actually, it's actually bad to be a man these days. And Ken was like, well, you guys are not doing patriarchy well. And the other guy was like, actually we are, we're just better at hiding it. And that kind of, like, when you get to Mattel and all the men in the thing, you kind of get that, like, they are doing patriarchy, but just hiding it better. And there are, most of the time, just hiring people that look like them, behave like them, straight white men. I think there was like a black man in that board, which I thought was very interesting. I think because this movie is, you know what, we'll get to that later. We'll get to the color blindness later. Anyways, this video is chaotic. That's what I should call it. A chaotic recap of the Barbie movie and my thoughts of it. That's gonna be I am drunk already. No, I'm not drunk. I'm tipsy, actually. Barbie escapes, obviously, and Sasha and her mom, actually don't know what her mom is called. Let me check that real quick. Jesus Christ, I have 34 seconds. America Ferrera is the actress's name. Jesus Christ, I can't even type. Yo, I'm too drunk for this. Ferrera, Barbie. Oh my god. When you Google Barbie, there's like these little like sparkles that come up. I didn't know that, and everything's like pink. Yay! Yo, this is too chaotic for me personally. Okay, I realize now that I'm getting a little too drunk, so I'm gonna keep drinking. Is what I'm gonna do. Okay, America Ferrera's character, what's her name? Why doesn't it say her name? Gloria, exactly. So Barbie escapes, and Sasha and Gloria pick her up in the car, and that's when we realized that Barbie didn't come here for Sasha, because Sasha was not playing Barbie, obviously, because she hates Barbie. It was the mom that was playing Barbie. So it's the mom that's having these weird thoughts of death, depression, cellulite, all of these things, which I thought was kind of cute. I don't know, I guess I've never thought about playing with a doll as an adult, because I am an adult, but maybe I should. Although plastic is out these days, isn't it? She's like, you know what, let's get to, oh yeah, she gets chased by the Mattel people, so she's like, you know what, you know where we can go? Back to Barbie Land. So she takes them back to Barbie Land. She's like, you're going to love Barbie Land. Okay, it's nothing like the real world. Okay, it's not a patriarchy, it's a matriarchy. She doesn't say that, but okay. She's like, everything's ruled by women. We have a woman president. The Supreme Court is women. Everything's women. They're like, oh my god, that actually sounds cool. They get there. Ken has started patriarchy. Okay, they get there and they're like, they see the president like serving men, and they see like physicists and stuff like that just serving men, which I find so funny. And it's for both the characters, for Sasha and Gloria, this was like normal. They're like, okay, this is not what we expected, but it just feels like normal. And Barbie's all like, what is going on? I really am drinking too much. This is not just a glass. This is a big glass, okay? Right. Ken successfully started patriarchy in Barbie Land, so now the Kens were taking over. She goes to her house, her dream house, the ones that you can see through. Would never, could never, should never, really. Ken has turned it into his very own Mojo Dojo Casa house. Now, if you can't tell, I am a Ken lover because I relate to Ken a lot. Let's not get into that, okay? But I love Ken. I thought he was funny and great, so I love Ken. I didn't think Will Ferrell or Weird Barbie were that funny. I thought Ken was very funny. Anyways, he says there that Barbie failed him. Felt because she really did, though. Like, she really, really did. Because he got to see a world where men were respected. And he felt like Barbie this whole time has not been respecting me. So Barbie failed me. And he's right. Is this real recording? We're still recording. Yeah, we're still on. And so he's like, you failed me. And she did. All the Barbies in Barbie Land failed. All the Kens. It's true. It's very true. I am for Ken. Justice for all the Kens. He went from being obsessed with her and like, oh my god, be mine, to being like, oh, you can be my long distance, long term, casual girlfriend. Now, obviously, we get to see that he, in his own heart, like deep down, that he still was obsessed with her and head over heels in love with her. But you know, now he had this fake, like, what do you call it? He had this fake exterior where he was like, actually, I don't care. Because I can have any Barbie I want today, so I don't care. Why am I still drinking? I'm drunk. So this means that if the Kens were taking over, the Barbies were brainwashed. Now this is to me this was a little unbelievable. There were there was certain things that didn't make sense in the Barbie movie. This was the main thing that didn't make sense to me. Because if you came to patriarchy, so if you came here in this world and told them the whole thing about like, oh, there's a world of matriarchy, it's not like the men are gonna jump to it like, oh, this sounds like amazing. No. So I don't understand how the Barbies were like, oh, a world where you're on top and we are your servants. I love that. Sign me up. There's no way. But it's for the plot. So Barbie gives up. She's like, you know what? You screwed up with all your depressing thoughts that affected me. I screwed up by, bringing Ken, and now I'm just going to give up and wait for one of the Barbies to just snap out of the brainwashing thing and just fix everything. And they're like, Gloria and Sasha were like, so you're just gonna give up? She's like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And they're like, you know what? We're gonna go back. And then they realize, you know what? We need to fix things. So they go back with Alan to Weird Barbie. Sasha, Gloria, and Alan go to Weird Barbie. And then we see that there was like a bunch of people there. There was brainwashed Barbies. There were Barbies that were not brainwashed, and then stereotypical Barbie, our main Barbie, that was having some kind of existential crisis where she says, I am not pretty anymore. I yelled. Sorry for yelling. I'm not pretty anymore is what she says. So she's having this existential crisis where she's like, who am I even? Like, what am I made for? I'm not pretty anymore. Like, if I'm not pretty, if I'm not stereotypical Barbie, then who am I? Such a great question. Who are you? Who am I? What is this? And then there's this whole monologue that Gloria, America Ferrer's character, does, where she talks about how weird it is to be a woman. I guess you would call it, like, what it's like to be a woman, how everything is contradictory, how there's these specific expectations of you have to be this, and then you have to be that, you've heard, if you've watched the movie, you've heard the speech. At first, when I watched it, the first time I watched it, I was kind of like cringe. It was like, are we really doing this? And the second time I watched it, I was like, hell yeah, yes, we're doing this. And the third time I watched it, I'm like, listen to this, listen to that. And I guess it was, we're all kind of brainwashed under patriarchy. There's this thing that has infested our brains. Like, even the fact that I thought it was cringe at first when I first watched it, that even speaks to the fact that my brain is very much, there's a virus, okay, and I need to install an antivirus, okay. After she says that, she says the whole speech, these Barbies that were brainwashed are suddenly, boop, unbrainwashed. They're not brainwashed anymore. So they're like, oh my god, you have to do this to you have to say all of that to every Barbie so that they're not brainwashed anymore and we can take over, we can take back our Barbie land. And she's like, okay, let's do that. So they unbrainwashed all the Barbies in Barbie Land, and they're like, you know what, the Kens are taking over, so what we should do is divide and conquer, meaning we should turn all the Kens against each other. And that's what they tried to do, or they did. Actually, they succeeded in doing that. What was interesting is how they used the fact that so many Kens liked Barbies and their jealousy of like, oh, you remember the Ken Ryan, Ken Simu power dynamic. They kind of used that with all the Kens to turn the Kens against each other so that they fight. They had like this whole war, which I thought was very interesting. You know, this is supposed to be like a woman empowerment movie, and we're using women empowerment as manipulation, basically. I don't know how long I've been filming. So the Barbies finally take back their land. They take it back, and Ken cries, and he doesn't, because he doesn't know who he is. By the way, when they're having like this war against each other, the Kens, is when the whole musical thingy happens, which is my favorite. I'm Just Ken. The song is beautiful. It's beautiful, and it was so perfect, and I'm so glad they had it in. Anyway, so Ken has this existential crisis where he's like, who am I? I don't know who I am. I thought we were gonna be together. And Barbie's like, you need to be you. And he's like, well, it's Barbie and Ken. And she's like, well, maybe what you thought made you is actually not who you are. And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, you're just Ken. He's like, what? I'm Ken. She's like, yeah, Ken is me. I am Ken. Yeah. So he basically discovers like to be himself. And he says this line before he discovers that he can be himself. He says, I only exist within the warmth of your gaze. Gaze. We've heard of gaze. We've heard of gazing. We've heard of the male gaze. I only exist within the warmth of your gaze. That is, I mean, it's stacked. There's so many, like, it's so deep. I love that line. I only exist within the warmth of your gaze. It's this, God, it's this need to always seem like this perfect man's woman. It's this, for Ken, the only way that he has a perfect day or has a good day is that if Barbie notices him. So it's for him, it's for women. It speaks to so many. It speaks to everyone. I only exist within the warmth of your gaze is probably one of the best lines that has been uttered since, remember WandaVision? What is grief if not love persevering? Who is in these writers' rooms writing this shit? Because you need a raise. Literally. They are on strike, by the way. They deserve, I mean, coming up with these lines, you deserve everything. You deserve what you deserve to be paid and more, actually. Oh yes, let's talk about the Barbies getting not like unbrainwashed by her talking about what it's like to be a woman, by Gloria talking about what it's like to be a woman. Instantly, this made me think of the consciousness raising groups from the 1970s. Before we get into that, actually, as we get into that, let's talk about what kind of feminism is in this movie. Now, obviously, since there is sort of a color blindness to it because they've hired so many actors that are not white and they don't mention anything about it, we're supposed to believe that this Barbie land is this society that is not affected by any race, any kind. It's just Barbies. Even the real world, it doesn't really mention any kind of race. Colorblind, very much blind to the color. So you kind of think, okay, this is white feminism because you don't care about, you're not talking about capitalism or race. What kind of white feminism? Let's talk about modern liberal feminism for a second here, because obviously the most popular kind of feminism is liberal feminism. So basically liberal feminism is sort of a continuation of the early feminist movements where they were fighting for the women's rights to vote, fighting for like equal representation, like equal political representation and equal pay and all that. Even to this day, we're still fighting for equal pay. So it's kind of a continuation of that. It was in the 60s. This was before the other kind of feminism that I'm going to talk about. So basically this kind of feminism has a constructivist outlook on gender, where it believes that gender is a construct, that biology has nothing to do with the way that you behave, which again sounds all fine and dandy. Now, the criticism of this, which I think definitely is brought up in Barbie as well, at the end of Barbie, because the way that Barbie ends is the Barbies take over, right? And the Mattel people, they come to Barbie and they're like, let's end this whole shebang, whatever has happened, let's end it. They're like, we're gonna put everything back to what it was. But once Ken has this realization where he can be himself and he's worthy just being himself, not Barbie and Ken, but just Barbie, just Ken. They're like, you know what? We don't want it to be like before. The Barbies go, hey, we want to integrate Kens into our society a little bit more where they can have more power. And they're like, oh my God, can we have a man in the Supreme Court? And they're like, no, but you can have like a lower position somewhere. And then the narrator at the end kind of says, eventually the Kens in Barbie land would have as much power as women do in the real world. This is the same criticism that modern modern liberal feminism gets, where it's like you slowly integrate women into society, but it doesn't eliminate the oppression of women. You can have a woman prime minister. The women in the country will still be oppressed. It's not like it just automatically gets rid of it. So with that in mind, then you think, is Barbie criticizing modern liberal feminism, where it's like it's slowly integrating it, like the Kens are slowly being integrated into the society of Barbie land, where Barbies have all the power, but they're not going to have that much power at the end because it's compared to women having power under patriarchy in the real world, which is, they have power, but it's not like they're, completely liberated. So is it criticizing it? I do. It's not like they sat down and said, you know what, we're going to criticize a modern liberal feminism in this movie. But I think without even knowing it, they are criticizing it. And this criticism comes from radical feminism that started in the 1970s. Yes, a new kind of feminism. There are so many kinds of feminism, which is why it's always so confusing when people are like, oh, feminists think this way. Which ones? Which ones are you talking about? Is it the modern liberal feminism? Is it radical feminism? Is it the popular feminism? Is it white feminism? Is it post-colonial feminism? Like, which feminism are you talking about? There's so many different ones. It's actually hard to keep up. Well, it's not actually. Let me not exaggerate. But anyways, radical feminism basically critiques modern liberal feminism for only focusing on the political and economical oppression that women experience. As I said, it's only focusing on like political representation and equal pay and all that, and not really focusing on like the other parts that are oppressing women. And radical feminism focuses on the private sphere, how women are oppressed in the home, in the family. There's sexual oppression, there's sexual abuse, there is the men's dominance over women isn't just political and economical, it is also in the private sphere, which modern liberal feminism does not highlight at all. And this is where the sort of tagline, the slogan, the personal is political, sort of comes in, and where women sort of organize in these groups, these consciousness raising groups, where they talk about what it's like to be a woman and the different kind of experiences they've experienced. And they talk amongst themselves like, oh, this has happened to me, and why is it like this, and why isn't it like that? And imagine being a woman and just having all of these experiences where you're like, that's kind of weird. Why am I being treated differently than my brother? Why am I treated differently than my colleague? Why am I treated differently than this person and that man and this boy? And all of this being in your head, and everybody else telling you that, well, it's just the way it is. Your parents telling you it's just the way it is. Your teachers telling you it's just the way it is. And then you go to church and the people are telling you, oh, it's just the way it is. Your religion tells you it's just the way it is. So it's almost like you're just keeping all this to yourself. And then there's these groups of women. They're like actually talking about the experiences, and they're actually explaining things that you've been experiencing, and then you realize, oh, it's not just me, I'm not alone, this is actually a thing. So they talk about this, they come to conclusions, and they analyze them politically, and they come up with solutions. So these were the consciousness raising groups that were happening in the 70s. And this is sort of what I thought of when the Barbies were being like, when Gloria was talking about all of the ridiculous things that are expected of women. And it's the same thing, she's talking about how ridiculous it is to be a woman, and certain things that society's expectations, and you have to be this and you can't be that, and the Barbies are automatically like, oh my god, so I was a Nobel Prize winner, I was a physicist, and sort of it's a very radical feminist thing. In the 70s anyways, radical feminism today's, I feel like, is different. That's a whole other video. And this era of feminism, or radical feminism, is actually where the term patriarchy sort of shows up for the first time, because you're analyzing everything, you're naming things, and you're coming up with new concepts of explaining what's happening and the oppression that you're experiencing. So patriarchy comes up. Now obviously, like any other kind of feminism or ideology, there's going to be criticisms. You exist because you criticize others, and others exist because they criticize you, obviously. Another criticism that radical feminism has had of modern liberal feminism is the fact that modern liberal feminism focuses on the fact that men's positions, or everything male, is superior and sort of like neutral, and women, everything feminine, everything women-like, is other than. So the aim of modern liberalism is to have as much power as men have, and to be just like men, because everything male is neutral and superior. So they want to reach that level of superiority, basically, which radical feminism says we shouldn't be aiming to become like men. We should celebrate what it is to be a woman, everything that comes with it, which I think Barbie does. I feel like it's celebration of the liberated woman. It's a celebration of everything feminine. It's pink. It's everybody that is a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. They're all wearing makeup and having this, like, their hair and makeup done. They're all girly and they all have these serious careers. It's like the idea of this liberated woman that is also very feminine, celebrating what it is to be a woman. So I feel like there is a correlation between radical feminism of the 70s, I guess, and Barbie, the movie. As I said, others, you exist because you criticize others, and others exist because they criticize you. The criticism that a lot of people or a lot of other feminists have had on radical feminism is the fact that in radical feminism, men are seen as sort of the villains. They are the reason why women are oppressed. And these other feminists are saying that we should be focusing on structures and not the oppressive structures that are oppressing women and not men. And sort of completely forgets, it sort of focuses a lot on men's dominance over women and the fact that men have power and women don't have power, and completely forgets the structures that oppress women. It also completely forgets that some men are also more oppressed than some women under patriarchy. So this idea that men are the only reason why women are oppressed under patriarchy doesn't work, because obviously there are some men that are more oppressed than women. This sort of idea doesn't track. You need a different ideology, especially because there are a lot of men that suffer under patriarchy. And I think that the way that this movie shows how there are a lot of men that suffer under patriarchy is when Ken loses interest in patriarchy, when, patriarchy in Barbie Land collapses and Ken's all crying and he's like, you know what, I sort of lost interest in patriarchy after I realized that it's not about horses. So he has a particular interest in horses, and patriarchy was just kind of like, So this idea that, it's men are individual. Men have their own interests and their own things. Even the song, I Am Just Ken, it says, am I not hot when I'm in my feelings? This really, 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 really just points to toxic masculinity, about how a lot of men don't feel like they can share their emotions without being judged, without feeling like less of a man, because there's these like rigid gender roles under patriarchy where men are supposed to be the protectors and breadwinners and women are stereotypically the emotional ones. And so it's understandable that as men they feel like they cannot open up, because then it'll go against what's traditionally what a man's supposed to be. And again, this is just one way that men suffer under patriarchy, which is why the radical feminism thought of it all doesn't. The whole men are oppressing women and men have all the power and they have there's nothing that oppresses men. There's no way that they suffer under patriarchy. It doesn't really work. The second criticism, which I've mentioned, is the fact that radical feminism is ahistoric, which means that it doesn't really pay attention or pay much mind to history, and it's also ethnocentric, which means that it doesn't really pay much mind or much attention to other cultures other than its own. So its perspective stems from white middle-class women's position in society. When you think about what is being highlighted in the Barbie movie, it's all about gender. It's nothing about capitalism or race or anything or any other oppressive structure that oppresses some men and women. It's all about just white middle-class women. The mom, Gloria, is middle class, so it completely disregards the oppression working class women of color, women that don't live in the Western world face, because it just focuses on white middle class women in the Western world. That's it. That's all it focuses on. So that's the second criticism, and I feel like that's also a valid criticism of the movie. Obviously, again, like I said at the top, this is a doll movie. This is a Barbie movie. It's not to be taken completely seriously, but if we were to take it seriously, or if we were to just analyze it, this is what we would say. It definitely is like very much radical feminism 1970s. It really tracks. We end this video by talking about, is the Barbie movie really too woke or too feminist? Is it misandrist? It's feminist because there's as we've discovered, an ideology, a feminist movement that sort of fits the Barbie movie. It fits everything that the movie is trying to say, the radical feminist movement of the 1970s. Is it misandrist? No, because it definitely really points to the fact that men do suffer under patriarchy, and Ken, he is himself, he is his own. And that's very powerful. So no, it's not misandrist. I think the men that are criticizing this movie for being misandrist or anti-men, first of all, have you even watched the movie? Do you understand the movie? If you feel like it's mocking men, understand that these are obvious caricatures. Barbie. You think that every woman relates to Barbie? I did not relate to Barbie. I don't wear pink every day. I am not that girly. I don't have the same feelings that Barbie has. Obviously, there are times where even in the, I'm not pretty anymore. Who am I? What am I made for? But America Ferrera has this speech. Obviously, you relate to that. So there are parts of the movie that you can relate to. I also related to Ken. But I think, again, it's a dull movie. Take it with a grain of salt or a pinch of salt or whatever it's called. This is just sort of a fun video where I analyze it. And is it too woke? Not really that woke, to be honest. If it was too woke, or not too woke, I don't know if there is such a thing as too woke. This was not too woke. This was very much white radical feminism. Radical feminism, this is what it was. And I saw that some people said that this is Black Panther for white women. And it was. It's true. The rumors are true. I do have to talk about the ending, because the ending didn't make sense. The fact that she wanted to be human, I understand that. Why do I understand that? Because she's stereotypical Barbie. She's not a Barbie that has some kind of a career, some kind of a purpose in Barbie land. She has no purpose in Barbie land. She just vibes. And after she went through the whole thing, she went to the real world, she realizes that there's a lot more to life than just being a plastic Barbie. It is understandable that she wants to be a real person and experience something new. God knows how many years she's been in Barbie land to experience something new, to be someone, and to eventually also deal with the fact that you're as a human, you're gonna die. I understand that. You live in a utopia for like how many fucking years? You're gonna wanna end it anyways. So I mean, it was inevitable. That makes sense. So the ending made sense to me. And what didn't make sense was this whole scene where she's, this white background with this ominous music, and she's, I don't know, it was just all very dramatic. It was too dramatic for the Barbie movie. I mean, everything has been like very fun and thing, and it's like very dramatic. Also, let's talk about Ruth Handler for a second here before we end the video. What was that character? I guess it was, like I said at the top, it was definitely Mattel being like, hey, the inventor was a woman. There's women who work for Mattel, and they are a big, huge part of Mattel. So there's that part. So they're sort of backtracking on their criticism earlier in the movie. I get that. I mean, her character was kind of random. I guess, yeah, you have to have the inventor of Barbie in the Barbie movie, I guess. I personally thought it was kind of random, but the scene with the white background, ominous music, that was also very random. But I really liked the joke at the end where she goes to her gynecologist. That was funny, I guess. It was like not a ha-ha kind of funny, it was like a chuckle. Yeah. She has a vagina now, she has a pussy. But yeah, I guess that was the Barbie movie. Let's finish this off together. I should do this, where in every video I finish a full glass of this. I have probably half the wine left now. Anyways, I enjoyed this movie. I watched it, like I said, 3 times in theaters. I have not watched Oppenheimer, but I will watch it. I thought it was fun. It sort of kind of takes you on a whole adventure. It's totally different than the real world, because it's like plastic and everything, but it also reminds you of the real world. It also at the same time is criticizing itself, but also it's being very funny about it, and it's fun. It's just, I thought it was great. Again, this was just kind of fun to analyze it in my own way. And yeah, that was kind of it. If you like the video, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and I'll be back next week with another video. What is the video? I don't know. Another drunk video, definitely. But that was it. Toodaloo, mother. Hey. Did you notice that I had literally 2 sunglasses on my head? Did you notice that I had 3 watches? Did you notice that I wore a black shirt for Ken? I want to drink more. Let's not.